Welcome back to another podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. This podcast is about getting real, accurate experiences, getting past the fluff of the marketing of all coding bootcamps. Today, we are going to be reviewing Rithm School. So, like usual, we'll go ahead and get started with our intros. Jennifer, I got to remember the questions. I always forget them. When did you graduate? Are you still looking for a position? Did you find one? And then, what industry did you come from?
So I graduated in November 2019. I was in Rhythm's 13 cohort. So we usually go by R13. I just completed my second job search. So I found a job within 6 months, then spent a year at my current position, did a second job search, and just wrapped that up. My previous industry before this was I was trying to become a technical artist for the video game industry, but found it was very shaky at the time. A lot of studios closed and switched careers.
Okay. What was the first job that you got? What was the title?
My first job, that's a tricky question because I worked at a Taco Cabana, which is like a fast food joint. But before that, when I was younger, I used to work the food
That's
route.
my fault. I meant first job after the coding bootcamp.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
My fault.
Yes, I wasn't sure how far back you wanted to go. So my first job was a front-end developer at a company called Get Insured.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Well, thank you. How about you, Lucas?
Yeah, so I was R19, cohort number 19. I graduated just a few months ago, like mid-March of this year, 2021, for whatever year people are going to be watching in the future. And I am employed. My job hunt, I was really, really fortunate and did not take a super long time because I have a great network. So thank you, everybody in my network. I work at a startup called Fair Square Medicare. It's like an insurance brokerage for Medicare recipients, so 65 and up, pretty much. My title is software engineer. I'm actually the only engineer on the team, except the CEO is also an engineer, so he's like my partner. But I build everything. It's super fun, and I love it. I'm very happy. Before this, I was an assistant manager at a sustainable fashion retail store in San Francisco here in the city, which, yeah, great product, but I did not have a great time working there. And I like my life much better now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty great. My first job was at Home Depot. So just to go way back, and that was actually an interesting experience, glad I have it.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Lucas. How about you, Jessica?
So I just finished Rithm in June 2021. It's July 2021 now. I was in R20 and I just signed an offer last week.
Congratulations.
Yeah, before becoming a software engineer, I did regulatory compliance for financial services.
Okay. All right. Really cool. Well, thanks for coming on. I'm excited to jump into this. Rithm has been requested for a while in my community. I was kind of waiting for Rithm to grow a little bit. Alumni pool seemed to be a little bit low, but kind of reached a point where we're ready. So why'd you pick Rithm?
For me, it was word of mouth. I was attending City College classes, and I was basically had a teaching assistant that was a part of another group I joined, and we were practicing programming on the weekends. And he was talking about this boot camp he joined called Rithm School. He said he wanted to be there forever. Talked about the instructors, talked about the small classes. It was basically word of mouth for me. And to be honest, I didn't do much research into other boot camps, because I just saw like the small classes, which is something I liked. Since I I have experience in small classes, and it's always nicer when there's not that many people.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I have a pretty hard answer on this one. I did a ton of research beforehand. This, like when I was going to enroll in a boot camp, this was like pretty much during COVID. I started learning how to code when we were all just at home. So if I didn't do my research, like what else was I doing? You know, just sitting around. So yeah, I looked at multiple boot camps. I knew I'm in San Francisco. There's plenty of people that I know who have gone to boot camps or, you know, within my network to hear about their experience. And like Hack Reactor obviously came up as a big one. And, you know, it seems like an okay program and it does have a big alumni network. But I went to, like, my educational history also had a lot of small class sizes. And I know that I perform well in that environment, and you actually get attention, you know, from the teachers, which is the whole point of attending a program, because all of this stuff is on the internet. You can learn all of this for free on the internet, but it's really hard. You know, you hit these walls where there are other concepts that you need to understand so that you can understand this one thing. And if someone is there who already knows everything, they could probably explain it to you in like 30 minutes and you can move forward. But if you don't know where to look and you don't know what you don't understand, it's just impossible. And that's like literally why I even decided to go to a boot camp in the first place.
Yeah, I want to add to that, like the entire Rithm curriculum is on their website.
Yeah.
The thing that you're paying for is their mentorship, really, and the guidance.
Yeah.
Not like the classes or courses or material, just like what they're going over.
The main courses are there. Not all of the projects are on the website, but all of the course material is actually on the Rithm site. So if you wanted to, you could go through Rithm's entire curriculum on your own.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, they have a curriculum.
Okay, very cool.
I think they're like, not everything is on their website because they obviously like come up with new lessons. They're pretty agile. You know, my cohort, they were like, we're going to do a lesson on TypeScript because it's becoming really popular in the industry. So let's add that in. And I'm pretty glad they did. My job is like all in TypeScript now. So yeah, they try to stay nimble and stay relevant. But for the most part, they do have like a huge portion of their curriculum just for free on the internet. But yeah, you want the help. Like I knew it was all available on the internet, but you want someone to review your code, you know, tell you what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, give you projects, give you assessments. Like obviously the structured environment is going to help. Another big reason I went to Rithm School was the company projects. Like the whole point of doing this is to get a job as a software engineer. And I'm a college dropout. I was working retail. I'm not a hot commodity, you know, to a tech company as a software engineer. So being able to list like an internship on my resume right after, you know, which we did in the program, that I just knew that was going to be a big help for me, and I could have like some sort of work experience to list and knock some non-technical things off my resume, you know, take up some space.
Yeah, and that's pretty huge. And I think it speaks a lot that they're willing to share their curriculum for free and expose that. It shows what they prioritize, like what the actual value that you're receiving is for the large amount of money that you are paying for Rithm. So that definitely makes a statement in itself. But Jessica, what about you? Why'd you choose Rithm?
Similar to Jennifer and Lucas, the small class sizes were really attractive to me, but also like Lucas, the company projects, the internship, it wasn't necessarily for me like, oh, something to have on my resume. It was like, is this something I would actually be able to do in real life for the rest of my life? And you know, I had a great time with my company project. I had a good time during my internship. So I was like, I could do this for the rest of my life.
That's good to hear. Well, I hope so. But you'll have to let us know if you do change your mind. I really think it's powerful. It's a powerful statement to produce your curriculum for free online. I wonder who actually designed it. It was a custom curriculum or they adopted it. But this definitely can give, first of all, I am pushing more of people kind of need to get a better idea of, Jessica, like you said, you weren't sure if you actually wanted to become a software engineer. You weren't sure if you wanted to code, if you were going to be doing it long term. I highly encourage people just to experiment, to learn something, to build something, play around with it. Like, do you like those aha moments? Do you not? Do you just get frustrated and quit? And like, just figure out what you like about coding, what's actually attractive, because motivation, it'll die over and over, and you have to push through it with something of substance. So this is really cool, but we're going to dive more into, I guess, the curriculum. Like, what did you guys learn? Especially if it stood out to you.
Well, I guess I'll start since I'm the oldest, Rithm cohort here. So a lot of the cohort changes from cohort to cohort. So I was one of the last full in-person classes. And we also were the last ones to learn, I believe, classes. I might be wrong. There might be one cohort more, but the curriculum is constantly changing. And a lot of what we did was working on new projects, building from scratch, and then working on existing projects. Because a lot of what you're doing is working on existing databases or existing projects. And you need to be able to look at a code, understand what it is, and then manipulate it from there. And I think that gave me, and that gives a lot of Rithm people an advantage, because they know how to read other people's code and learn what they do and don't like and start forming opinions.
I like that. What else?
Yeah, I still think that their general structure for the coding projects that you do is quite similar. Like, some things you are starting from scratch, which is usually when there's a new section of the course, we're learning Python and Flask. In the beginning, you're going to be starting these projects from scratch because you need to know how to start a Flask project, how to get that environment set up. And you work up to larger projects where they'll give you more of a code base that you now need to add to, when you actually understand how Flask works. And now you can see a Flask app and, know what's going on and how you can add things to it. So it's a nice gradual, lift as you go through. And I'd say they do that every time. But specifically the tech stack, they start first week or so just going over more intermediate JavaScript, just in general, making sure that everybody's strong on the foundations. And then you hop into just building vanilla apps, jQuery, HTML, CSS. And then we did Flask with Python, and then we did Express, and then we did React. And then it was data structures and algorithms week for, algo interview problems, which was super fun. I thought that was a cool week. So yeah, that's the general structure of it that we went through. And like I said, they interject some fun lectures sometimes, or maybe in the final week, they'll do a TypeScript one or a Redux one. You probably did Redux for your course, Jennifer, did you? I know that they
yes, we did. We did Redux.
Yeah, they phased it out for ours because just industry trends. They were you maybe don't need this, and we could focus on other things instead.
And I would argue, because often, Redux is usually, it follows React, and people are still kind of struggling to understand React and reinforce that. I find that a lot of people or coding bootcamps start losing students when they get to Redux. It feels like it's just too much complexity when they haven't really understand React. That's an interesting move to drop Redux from the curriculum. Most apps that you will work on definitely won't need Redux. And so...
Yeah, unless you're Airbnb, you probably don't need it.
Cool. Anything you'd add, Jessica?
Yeah, like Lucas, we learned React with hooks rather than class React. So we had so normally they do 3 weeks of React, and we basically only did 2.5. And the rest of the time was like TypeScript. And we also did like a small like AWS project. I personally thought that was like the weakest part of the curriculum, was trying to, like, me and my partner struggled so hard to figure out AWS, and we struggled for 3 days. So I think that was like probably the weakest part of the curriculum, but like the rest of the curriculum I thought was fantastic. Even the data structures week, like each day they would go over a specific data structure, and they would do trees one day and then they would do graphs one day. And so I thought that was really helpful for me too.
Okay. Couple questions. So when they dropped the classes in React, was that something new specifically for your cohort?
I think they had dropped the class-based components from the curriculum. I mean, they didn't like drop it entirely. They did go over it and say,
okay,
it can also be written this way. We're going to focus on function components, but like they didn't like completely ignore it. They did show us that it was possible to do it that way, and they like explained it. It just wasn't like the main focus of how we wrote React.
Gotcha. I think there's a benefit with focusing on functional components for sure. I do think there's a benefit in people that are going to be working with React understanding how to build a class-based component, because there's still code bases with class-based components. You need to understand that. You need to understand the different syntax it's going to represent lifecycle methods and how to interact with them, and like what did you lose from the previous class ones versus the functional ones? What did you gain? Because they definitely do work differently. So do you feel like you would have easily been able to go into a current code base with nothing but class components and pick it up pretty quickly?
I don't know about your cohort, Lucas, but my cohort, we spent a day like converting class React into like hooks, React with hooks, and then like vice versa. And so I feel like I would be pretty comfortable with, going into a code base that does use React with classes and being like, okay, I kind of understand this. I know how to interpret it, and I can like kind of maybe eventually convert it to React with hooks.
Okay, cool. Well, okay, so I love that they focus on functional components. It sounds like, and it looks like from their curriculum, weeks 14 to 16, computer science and interview prep. You mentioned like an entire day going over trees and probably practicing problems. Usually, I shouldn't say usually. I think it's a little bit more common to at least spend 1 week on data structures and algorithms. I shouldn't even say more common. A lot of coding boot camps drop it, and they kind of will provide supplemental information. So I like that they do focus on it. If they're going over data structures and algorithms for 2 weeks, I do find that a lot of students need more practice than just 2 weeks to get very comfortable with it, to be competitive in the market. Do you feel like they would benefit from like maybe teaching that a little bit earlier and then providing some practice along the way?
That's, I think, a common, not necessarily a complaint, but it's a common thing that I've heard from other Rithm people I've spoken to, is that we always feel like the data structure week is always short, like too short. There's always a lot of supplemental research that we have to do, practices on our end. So we're just given like the very like basics, and then from there we have to study further. I don't know how it was for the other cohorts past me.
Yeah. I think it's a tough like question. And actually, I assume what they're talking about there with that 14 to 16, week 14 to 16 is like job preparation, like with the career coach, going over like, how do you write your resume? How do you answer all these questions? And then getting paired up, and we do like practice sessions with our classmates. I thought they did a pretty good job with all that. And then the data structure and algorithm was like just 1 week. And they provided a ton of extra questions for us to do. Like, I really do think that it's not like there's just a few core concepts. There's not that many data structures. There's only so many data structures. There are tons of algorithms, but the point is that you can't just memorize every algorithm, and every problem could have some special algorithm to learn. And the way to get good at that is to just do a bunch of those problems. Like, there's only so much having a teacher there explaining every problem to you is going to help you do the next problem on your own, because you're going to be sitting in an interview at some point and you're going to have to solve these things. And it's a lot of like pattern recognition almost. So that's just a practice makes perfect kind of activity, in my opinion. Some people could have differing opinions, but I watched like 3 hours of YouTube videos on each of the data structures we were going to do the night before we had that lesson. And I felt really well prepared. And I thought that the lesson didn't like explode my brain. And I was able to like do well on the questions, which were like beginner questions. I'm not saying I don't work at Google, everybody, but I didn't break my brain doing all that. And I knew that if I wanted to get good at them, I was just going to have to do them a ton. And I didn't really want to.
That's good advice, and I agree with you. But you also mentioned the idea that you love them. That's not something I often hear either. So it almost feels like you pick them up well. And some people's minds work that way, where you're able to pick that up a little bit faster. You mentioned this idea of practice. I would agree, like having an instructor, especially like hold your hand when there's like a limited amount of data structures, and then it's just figuring out like what algorithms are going to benefit from handling the data in a certain way or storing the data in a certain way. So like the concepts are pretty minimal, and you just need to practice. You can't, like you said, you can't memorize problems. Completely agree with all that. I want to emphasize on the practice though. And so it sounds like towards the end, they don't, people are kind of requesting a little bit more time with it. Do they do a good job? It sounds like you probably need to continue practicing because they shove it at the end and you're probably practicing while you're interviewing. Do they do a good job of, like, I would be curious, like most graduates, when they graduate Rithm, what size portion of their day are they focused on just practicing algorithms? Like, what does Rithm emphasize? Like, how do I ask this? How much priority does Rithm emphasize that you put on data structures and algorithms after you graduate?
Not a ton. And I would agree with them. I did I guess technically you could say I had to do one algorithmic problem in an interview post Rithm. I think, especially if you're going like the smaller company, more startup route, which most people coming out of boot camps are, yeah, they're probably not going to ask you like a hard level leak code problem. Just almost guarantee they're not going to. Maybe medium, if they do that at all. Like for the company I work out on my all day assessment, I was sent the code base and I like built a flow and submitted a PR like on the actual code base. So yeah, I don't even think I would want to work at a place that was just throwing algorithmic problems at me unless that's what the job was going to require.
So I worked at several good companies that did that and gave that type of interview process. And I can share some details. A lot of times companies will do that because it takes a lot of resources and a long amount of time to actually hire someone. And when you have hundreds of applications, especially like over 100 junior developers that can't even do a FizzBuzz test, that don't really know how to code, you have to filter them out some way. I like that you emphasize you're probably not going to get the hard questions unless you probably go to like big tech or something like that. So it feels like they're really focused on practical skills. I agree. The emphasis shouldn't be on data structures and algorithms. And I do want to get your opinion, Jessica, about that as well. But Lucas, I can tell you for certain, a lot of people agree with you. they feel like, why am I being tested over this? And they complain that they're being tested over it. Unfortunately, a lot of companies still do. Maybe in your area, they've kind of weaned back on that. I think it would depend city on city. But I do like your focus on more practical skills. And just go ahead.
For the larger company, like it's the only way to do it. That I totally understand. But I knew I was going for a smaller company. If there's like 8 people at the company and you can't like take the time to go over what you have, like 10 applicants probably, like, you can take some time and figure out if they have the practical skills. But yeah, if you have a large business and you have 100 applicants, like there's no other option except to do algo problems and filter people out.
So a lot of startups will get hundreds of applications, like even new startups, mid-size and larger, they'll get hundreds for the junior positions. I think 10 is highly underestimated. So like one thing we did at the last company, and I didn't agree because I think the problems took way too long, but we would get hundreds of applicants for a really simple junior position. And so I would be curious, like what area are you in where you are applying to positions where you only have like 10 applicants?
I'm in SF. I don't know.
San Francisco?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, some companies probably get tons and they have like a cool business that everybody wants to work at. But even still, out of those hundreds of applicants, how many are just like auto filtered out of like, you clearly, or you just wrote your resume really poorly, but you probably clearly do not qualify for this position. I think just because there's a big number, it doesn't always mean there's actually a big number of applicants. Plenty of them just don't meet the requirements, which is understandable.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your opinion. I've definitely challenged it because I wanted to like really see what got you to get this perspective. Sure. Jennifer, go ahead.
I wanted to kind of answer, at least for my cohort, like the percentages, I guess you can say. So for us, we were more like splitting up into pairs and we were like accountability partnering with people. So that's when you would practice what stage you're at with other people. So we would practice behaviorals with each other. We would practice leak code problems when we're taking leak code, or like take home problems when we have take homes. I guess for us, the emphasis was a little bit, I would say, higher on algorithms. But a lot of it was behavioral because we understood that we were coming at a disadvantage with the technical, and that our best chance would be at connecting with the company and the people because they're looking for that different perspective. Otherwise, why go to a bootcamp grad? Like you're looking for someone who will bring in a different perspective. And so you got to be able to present your story in a way that people will want to work with you. And then as long as you have the skills to back it up, then it's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I definitely like that focus on behavioral. And a lot of junior positions are about showing like what uniqueness do you bring? Like a lot of people can bring a technical proficiency. What else do you bring and how do you bring it? But Jessica, okay, definitely want to hear your experience with it.
So actually week 1, we went over like big O notation and we did some very simple algorithm patterns like I think frequency counter and multiple pointers. And throughout our time, they would give us like algo questions and it was like, okay, like I guess we're going to solve an algo question during our weekend assessment. And I thought that was really helpful. Like, and they would ask us like, oh, like what's the, run complexity of what you just wrote? How could you make it better? And so I thought that was like really helpful for me personally. I actually got asked that question once in an interview. I did like this frequency counter problem. I'm like, okay, what's the runtime of this? And I was like, linear. So I thought it was like actually really helpful, like that we had practice with, obviously an algorithm that I actually used in the future. But the data structures portion, I thought it was pretty helpful just to have exposure to it. My cohort has like a standing meeting every Thursday where we just practice a couple leak code questions. And it's very obvious that none of us are good at data structures. Like, we're definitely more like an algo crew rather than a data structures crew.
Okay, interesting. So cohorts are definitely a little bit different among you, and that's definitely good to hear. So, their choice to give you exposure to like real world projects and professional projects, that's a big selling point for Rithm too. And we're going to get into that, but they are making kind of a lot of statements. And I'm wondering, are they specifically based in San Francisco or any other city?
They are primarily based in San Francisco. Their main location was in San Francisco before they changed to remote. So COVID has kind of changed them from being San Francisco based. Originally, you had to be local only because they really wanted that in-person interaction. But with COVID, they have changed, obviously.
Sure, I understand that.
I'm going to go back into the workspace starting in October.
Ooh, very cool. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to that. That's awesome. So you had mentioned that your classes were small, and that was kind of one of the selling points, right? You wanted that closeness. You wanted to interact with people and get that one-on-one attention with the instructor. Wait, how big was each person's cohort?
Started off 18. I think we finished with around 16 or 17.
Okay. How about you, Lucas?
Mine was 10 people, and we finished with all 10.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Jessica?
17, and we ended with 16.
Okay. One instructor per class, or two, or did you have like fellows? 3?
Yeah. Well, I was scratching my face, but yeah. Or did somebody else hold up 3 fingers?
Jessica.
Great.
Oh, yeah. 2 instructors and a TA. That TA is actually now an instructor.
Interesting. Okay. So they're really investing in paying the instructors. Well, hopefully, I don't really know their salaries, but 3 instructors to that size of a classroom, are they like dedicated instructors to that classroom, or do they bounce between cohorts?
They're dedicated.
Wow. That's actually really impressive. Okay, I don't think I've heard that before. So in general, does everyone feel like they were pretty supported along the way? Did you find there were any points where like you really struggled to catch back up?
I mean, I didn't struggle, but I know a lot of people in my cohort, like some of them did struggle, and I have had people who've asked me about their experience and then also struggled. So, I mean, it's not, some people just can't keep up with the pace, or they overwork themselves so that they're tired the next day and just builds and they just get burnt out.
Okay. Yeah, and that definitely happens. I hear that Rithm School is a pretty high bar to get in. What is required to get into Rithm School?
It might be different than how I did. I had to do some coding exercises, I think 60. And then I had to do a whiteboarding exam with the instructors. So in person, so I actually had to do a whiteboarding exam for the first time with them. Okay. And after that, after you get accepted there, the work's not over. You have to do several assignments for them. So you have to practice more JavaScript and DOM HTML so that everybody kind of starts off on the same playing field. But yeah, I don't know what it is now.
Sort of similar, probably just because of like being remote. They're not doing the like ton of problems on whiteboarding anymore. I don't think. I just had to do, it was one-on-one with someone who ended up actually being my advisor and my instructor with the course. And he just asked me a couple coding questions that were like, probably like 5 or 6 Q on Code Wars. I don't know how to like rank how difficult they were. Actually, funny story. I really, really wanted to go to Rithm, and I was able to like schedule the interview, And I realized that I had no idea what a technical interview was going to be like or how to even prepare for that. So I went on Hack Reactor's site to see if I could book an interview with them like before the Rithm interview to practice. And even just going on their site, I don't mean to like trash Hack Reactor. I actually know people who've gone there and like have great careers, but I went on their site and it was a huge turnoff. You just go and like book on their basically like Calendly thing. And there's like multiple times throughout every single day, and all of them are fully booked. And these interviews are group interviews with like 10 to 20 people. And I was just thinking like, whoa, that's so many people that they're just interviewing all the time, like hundreds of people a day probably. And I was able to get in one, and it was just easy. Like it was a very easy interview. It was like, can you read JavaScript? You know, that was it. And yeah, that was kind of a turnoff for me, that it was way too easy. And the Rithm School one was like, I thought that I bombed it, but but I guess I didn't.
You did?
Yeah, it was much more difficult.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I did the same thing too, Lucas. I took so many like entry exams because I was so nervous that I wouldn't get into anybody. And like Rithm was by far the hardest one. When I took it, there were a total of 5 questions. And I only made it through the 3rd question. I was like, oh no, I only got halfway done.
I love that. I really do. I've always preached for it. I always, hopefully, you know, I think a lot of coding boot camps, sometimes you get this argument of like, how accessible is this education? But a lot of coding boot camps that do have these high bars, I don't know if Rithm does it. Maybe you can confirm it. I love when coding boot camps will provide like free education to kind of prep for the interviews, or they provide some sort of tips. Because like, you know, Lucas, like you said, all this is out there. It's all free. They could even go to Rhythm's curriculum and start learning stuff. Do they kind of map out or give you any sort of guidance into passing their interview process?
Yeah, so I guess I could speak up a little bit about it. So when we had to do the coding questions, a lot of it, they would point us to like some of their curriculum and be like, okay, this, they're in like the very beginner JavaScript. And then from what I've heard from other people, if you fail the first interview, you have like 2 more shots of getting into Rithm. And they'll give you tips and advice and be like, okay, you struggled here. I would study a bit more here. And then you have to wait like, I think 6 weeks. So they want you to study for 6 weeks before you come back and do it again. Do
they provide any like free material to study?
Yeah, they'll point you to, like, if they don't have it on their website, they'll be like, okay, go here. This is what I've heard secondhand, but I can't confirm myself.
That's true. They do free events all the time. There's one tomorrow night, building your first JavaScript game. It's free webinar. You can just sign up and attend with actually the guy who was my advisor. He's hosting it. And they also do ones that are like, you know, prepare for your Rithm School interview. They do webinars like that. Again, free to attend. You could just pop in. It's like 2 hours and they'll, you know, teach you fundamentals and stuff.
Yeah, I also attended one of those. Well, for me, it was in person. But it was like, prepare for your interview or prepare for Rithm. And you basically spent like a couple weeks preparing for the interview, or either preparing for the interview or the Rithm curriculum itself.
Yeah. And there is like a qualitative approach that they have for the interview. I did do poorly from a technical perspective in the interview. And Joel, my advisor, said he was talking to me about the interview process and that he just liked me. He said, yeah, your technical skills were like here, but you seem very enthusiastic, and, you know, I liked your attitude and your approach to learning. So that was like a big reason why I still got in. It wasn't just about like, can you crush these problems?
Yeah, okay. It is very much like a job interview in some ways. It's like every step of the process is preparing you for the job. Like from the curriculum to our weekend assignments, every part is meant to kind of test you and give you that experience with dealing with a job search.
Okay.
Before I took the Rithm assessment to like get in, I went to a couple study halls, and what it was like, so it was like random instructors, and it was about I think an hour where you could just go in and ask them questions. And one of the questions that somebody asked was like, "I'm working on the hack reactor prep. Can you help me with this?" and the instructor was so super chill. He was like, "Yeah, okay. Like, tell me what you've done so far. What's the problem? Where are you having trouble?" And it kind of gave me a sense of how the instructor would be and how the instruction would be. And I was like, I could be down with this. Like, I think I could learn like this. So that also really helped me too.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of good context there. I think it's just kind of funny that you, okay. Well, how you used Hack Reactor to kind of bounce your way into Rithm. Because one thing I can say is Hack Reactor, in my opinion, used to be pretty tough to get into. It used to be higher quality, and they were bought out. And, you know, I've talked about this in several live streams, and it does feel like when you're comparing it to a coding bootcamp that does invite, you know, a dozen people into the interview process, they do take a more individualized approach. I love that they offer those workshops. That's perfect for seeing some sort of exposure of like how the instructors actually teach. And before you actually invest that money, I think it's a good move on their part. So I think I got a feel for it. A lot of people have asked me questions and they want to get a feel for like what the interview process was like, because I have people in my community, they failed Rithm and they're just trying to prepare a little bit better. So this is good. I know they're going to appreciate this. Another big question is, what was the real professional experience like? What was that internship experience like?
I thought it was great. So basically what it was we got split into 3 different groups, and we were assigned like an instructor that would be like the head of the group. And mine was working on Numbers API, which is like a website. If you go to numbersapi.com, it gives you random facts about random numbers. And there were a bunch of tickets that were just open, and we could just grab any ticket that we thought would be interesting for us to learn. So we always did it as a pair. My group wanted to do pair programming, but they said if you really wanted to split up, like, you know, you could. But I think we felt more comfortable working as pairs together.
Okay.
Go ahead. I saw you unmute.
Okay. Yeah, mine was really fun. We split into 2 groups. One of them was working on a something, it's called LiveStack. I think it's still in like beta phase. It's some product from this VC fund. It's for people to like host webinars basically and accept money for them, something along those lines. I don't know. I didn't work on that one. And then my group actually worked on Rithm's like site, their student information system, you know, how all of the course content is distributed, managing access for current students, alumni, and admin access as well. It was very interesting, very challenging. It was actually in Django, which we were not taught in the course. And the course had more of a JavaScript focus. So super interesting to switch over to Django like that. And like learn it quickly, you know. We had like a morning stand-up every morning where we would just, you know, say, this is what I'm working on. These are my blockers, if any. And then, you know, wrap it up quick. Everybody talk for like 30 seconds and we'd get back to our work for the day. And like once a week, pretty much, we would do like a planning poker where we have a list of the GitHub tickets and we would vote like it's going to take 8 hours, it's going to take 10 hours. And then we would get our aggregated results and start delegating tasks once we knew how long we thought they might take.
That's interesting. Sorry if you guys mentioned this before. Do you actually have a choice of the internships? Like how much of a choice do you have
I was actually going to get into that with my answer.
Okay, you go.
Okay. So as the other said, we get split into 3 groups. I might have mentioned earlier that we had weekend assignments. Those are meant to be like take-home assignments. And how you do on the overall curriculum and the weekend assignments determine which company project you get into, because they can see, okay, you can handle learning a new language easier than the others, or you are able to pick up Python quite well, so maybe you'll pick up Django quite well. Like, they will see, like, they won't put all the smart kids in one bucket though. They will do it like it's real life. Like, okay, we'll put, like, these 2 seem to work together, so we'll put them in here. And then they will kind of like somehow mishmash teams together. And each project can be harder or easier. So there is like harder projects that you can work on. For example, mine, we had Ruby on Rails and React Native. So so everyone had to learn a little bit of Ruby on Rails. We got a few lectures. And then we also did like 1 or 2 lectures on React Native, since we learned React before. And for us, we had like GitHub issues as well. So we delegated the task ourselves, had daily stand-ups. And the company projects, I remember right, are 2 weeks or 3 weeks? 3? 3, okay, 3 weeks.
Okay.
Sorry, it's been a while.
No, you're fine. When you got your first position, were you working with a stack that you had learned at Codesmith?
I was using React, and then we had legacy code, which was not React. It was JSP pages, so more vanilla JavaScript than anything.
Okay. How about you two?
That is so interesting that you're working with a bunch of vanilla JavaScript. I feel like everything is like in some framework these days, you know? Yeah, my stack was like pretty much all new to me, I guess. It was TypeScript, and then front end was React with Next.js and Chakra for the, like, you know, prettiness for the UI components. And then on the back end, we're using GraphQL with Apollo, and technically it's Express, but the main thing what I'm working with is like GraphQL, Apollo, and Prisma, which is how we set up our database schema and get our resolvers for GraphQL.
Okay. How about you, Jessica?
That's funny that you say that, Lucas, because one of the tickets for Numbers API was like implement GraphQL endpoints. And me and my partner like picked that up because we were like, that'd be cool to learn. My company does a MERN stack. So the only difference is Mongo versus Postgres, which is what we learned in Rhythm.
Okay. So if you wanted to, I was wondering, like, does Rhythm really emphasize that they think you most likely you wouldn't work in the same stack of your first position or not? Are they trying to give you as much exposure to potentially different paradigms and, you know, ways to implement things? So if I wanted to, like, I was really comfortable with Rhythm's stack. I loved it. I want to get really good with it. I even wanted to specialize in it. When I get to that internship experience, that position, do I have any sort of say-so into saying, I don't want to pick up Django. I don't want to do this. Is that an option?
I know in my cohort, one of my fellow people talked to the instructors and was like, I'm not the best, but I want to work with this stack. And so they actually took her request in mind and actually assigned her to the stack she wanted. I mean, so it can happen. I think you also have to have the technical know-how to back it up as well.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, because I mean, it sounds like learning a new stack. You're going to have to show that you can at least, like, if you're going to pick up Django, you can pick up Python pretty easily as well. So I do like that they give those weekend projects and try to pair you with like the right personality. Like it feels like they put a lot of effort into putting you in a good internship position. It's going to challenge you in the right way. But it is possible to be spread too thin. And that experience could be a little less valuable if it's not going to be in the market or the stack that you really want to work with and all the jobs that you're going to apply to as well. So that's a big thing, or at least I wouldn't say it's a big thing. I think it's a small concern people might have, but that's good to hear that they try to fit you.
I mean, they take feedback on like how, so just like how the curriculum evolves, they also take feedback on the internship. And based off other people's internship experience, they will be like, okay, we don't want to work with this company again, so we won't work with this company again. I know I don't think it was in my cohort, but a cohort before, one of the groups wasn't happy with their internship experience.
Okay. Well, that's good that they take that feedback. I think I'll just ask one more question about it. Like, what was the hardest thing about getting put into that internship position?
For me, like learning the new stack.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, learning Django was very difficult. Django's like, big and powerful and super awesome if you know how to use it. But if you don't know how to use it, you're just like wading through this like murky water all the time. Yep. But I like learning new stuff and building new stuff, probably why I took a job at a tiny startup where I'm building everything, So yeah, I thought it was like pretty thrilling, but it was very, very hard. And there was a lot of support though, like if I needed somebody to hold my hand, there was somebody to hold my hand when I had to ask for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough where all of our projects were in JavaScript, so we didn't need to learn a new language. I guess for me, the hardest part was probably like not really knowing where to look. Like, and I know this is going to be like a real life issue where like, I don't know where to look in the code to fix this bug, or like, I don't know what this code is doing. And so I thought it was like really amazing that I got like that exposure to what do I do when I don't know what this code does? What do I do when I know there's a bug, but I don't know where to look? And it was really awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Just like springboarding off of that, and like kind of on the topic of what did we learn at the program, and like my biggest takeaway, like what do I feel like I learned now that I'm actually doing a job and can reflect on the experience. We learned how to learn things. There's no way that you're not going to have to learn a new library or a new tech stack at some position, in your life, or just in your free time because you feel like doing it. So it's important to understand the foundations of how a thing works. Like just because you know how to write a functional component doesn't mean you understand how React works. And there is a clear distinction there. And I'm glad that Rithm like made that clear to us, that they said, don't even worry so much about the syntax. Like we're going to throw a bunch of syntax to you in all these lectures. It's not about memorizing that. Like pay attention to the concepts that we're talking about. It's okay if you need to go and look at your notes to know how to write that thing later, but do you know why you need to write that thing? And do you know how it works? And I feel like they put a very, very large emphasis on those kind of topics throughout the whole course.
I think that's great advice. Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. Okay, well, so I kind of want to summarize a little bit. I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, and then I have one final question. We might even have used to have a bonus question I used to do. We never have time for it. We might this time. So it feels like the curriculum is, it's pretty strong. It's a bold move putting it for free. It does send the message that the value paying this amount of money isn't the curriculum, and I agree with that. That's a strong message. Not a lot of people get it. And that's incredibly important to understand. Which also means like you could take a curriculum like this and just like find mentors, go to meetups and network and like try to get software engineers to look at your code. And, we're software engineers. I hate to say it, but I have to say it, quirky, awkward personalities sometimes, and it's hard to meet people and like be outgoing, and it's something I had to like really develop when I first moved to Chicago. But yeah, it sounds like they have a strong curriculum. That's incredibly impressive that they have 3 instructors and 1 helper potentially. I've never heard that. So they're asking for a lot of money. I do like that they're putting it into the support that you're actually getting. The internship experience, Jessica, like you said, it's so incredibly hard to get that experience of like, how do I deal with this gigantic code base? And like, even if it's a small bug, like where do I start? Like, and there are patterns and conventions that you have to learn. Sometimes it isn't just about fixing the bug. It's like, how have people in the past fixed that bug? Let's find examples. Where do I find those examples? And so that's cool, because a lot of people, I think they jump the gun too quickly, and they're like, well, I hear about all these projects that employers don't care about, so I'm going to jump into an open source project. But open source, when you get into new projects, sometimes they're not junior developer friendly. Sometimes you're working on really small issues, and I think open source can be great down the road, and I encourage software engineers to consider it down the road, but sometimes it doesn't give you that the right support and experience that's really going to help you grow as a software engineer as a junior developer. So overall, it sounds pretty good. I do wish they focused a little more on data structures and algorithms. The San Francisco market sounds a little bit different, and I do agree, like startups, typically you're going to get more like projects and fundamental like focus interviews and stuff like that. Unfortunately, you still do get those whiteboard challenges. So if you find that you do finish that portion of the program and you're not super comfortable with it, like you really didn't pick it up at all, it might be something worth continuing to practice at least just a little bit. I like that they emphasize like outside of that, they probably emphasize like continue building. But with my summary, I think like those are the main points that I would highlight. The last thing is, I love how strict they are with the actual application process. That is usually a really good sign of a strong program, because I do think you have a phenomenal experience when everyone is on the same level. And if someone is on, they don't quite understand concepts, that would help them understand the first lesson. They're going to bring the entire class down, because usually the instructors have to take time to bring that student up to the rest of the class, not the other way around. So I think they're doing that well. I've heard mainly good things. So what I want to challenge you with is, what could they improve? And even if you feel like your experience was like really good, you've shouted that out loud and clear, even think about like some of your other classmates in your cohort. What did they struggle with? What do you think? Like, what are some of the things that you've heard from those classmates of where the program could improve?
Yeah, I think I touched upon it a little bit, where there was, I think, like half a week where we were just doing an AWS sprint with, like, basically it was like, okay, make AWS do this. And it was awful. Me and my partner had a terrible time. So I think, and I gave them the feedback, like, I think that week could be a little bit more structured, or maybe we could work on a capstone project where we pick what we want to do and we learn what we want to learn, rather than, okay, learn AWS. So I kind of gave them that feedback, and hopefully they incorporate it into their next cohort.
Cool. We did a choose your own adventure sprint. It was pretty fun.
Oh no. Wait, you were before her, right?
Yeah, like I said, they're pretty nimble with the course, and maybe, I don't know which instructors you had, but they all have their own approach, and it's up to them to decide what activities they're going to do on a daily basis.
Okay. I think that's pretty good feedback. And I feel like AWS, it's a little bit trickier to pick up, and a lot of coding boot camps don't teach it. Like, they'll settle with Heroku. I actually forgot to ask, do you feel like, I think it's mainly like full stack. You're learning the full stack in general, but do you feel like they focus more on front end or back end?
Front end, for sure.
Front end.
But it's full stack. Like, I have a full stack role right now, and I was definitely prepared for it. But it's a web development program. I would say that they're expecting you'll probably get a more front end focused role.
Okay. That's good to know. That's really helpful to know because some coding bootcamps strictly focus on the back end. That is their primary focus. And teaching AWS with a front-end strong program could be tricky. And it sounds like they didn't prepare well for that. But I'm sure it sounds like they take feedback pretty well. So I'm sure they do.
Also, AWS is a big pile of duty. So don't worry. I was just dealing with a bunch of AWS just annoyingness today. So I feel you still. Don't worry.
Thanks. I just lost all my Amazon viewers. I appreciate that, Lucas. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry.
All right. What else? What could they improve?
I guess I speak to a lot of people in different cohorts. So I know by the time I graduated, a lot of us felt like the timeline for when people get jobs, like especially during our cohort, we graduated in November, we had the holidays, and then the big thing happened as soon as jobs picked up. And it was hard to kind of judge them by that 6-month market that 80-something% of us will have a job. I mean, it took me like 6 months to get my first job. And I mean, the support from Rithm is still there. It's just, I know some people who are still on the job hunt from my cohort. And I know people I think in one of the previous Rhythms that also are on the job hunt. So even with this great program that we have, it's still possible that, it's still possible that you won't get a job as easy, like even a year out. So some of us felt like the numbers might be a little bit misleading. Also, a lot of us didn't get as high as a high of an offer. You might look on our website and see like this is quite a high statement as far as like salary that we could potentially get. Like not everybody gets that.
Yeah, and
especially for the first job.
And I mean that's a problem. And a lot of coding boot camps do it. It is misleading. It is a misrepresentation. I don't care if they are legally sound with how they offer it. This is something that a lot of people are really frustrated with the industry in general. And if Rhythm's doing it, that's still something that they need to be conscientious of, because even with these top programs, I have people coming to me frustrated because they were promised all of these kind of inflated values. Why didn't I get a job? Why didn't some of my classmates get a job? And so I think I'm going to release a video. I don't know if it's going to be before or after this one, but I think it's a good piece of advice. I'm glad you said it, to just be aware you might not get a job right away, and economy around the world is still hurting. So don't like just save up enough just for the program, and then when you get out, you're like panicked. I don't have any more money. I don't have a savings. So maybe it just means be a little bit more financially backed and prepared. Even if it's a good program, just be ready. Yes, I would definitely recommend that, because I mean, my cohort, we just expected, there'll be a delay because of the holidays. Who knew global pandemic would happen? Right. But yeah, even before then, I was speaking to a few people, and we were like, we're not sure if the numbers were, I guess, as accurate as they could have been. We have noticed that, I guess the numbers haven't changed that much since we've joined the program. So we're not sure. I mean, like, I know Lucas and Jessica got jobs within 6 months. So it's like, it happens. It just, not everybody's going to get the magical job within 6 months. Yeah.
I think everyone from my cohort has a job from just March. I think just yesterday, I just saw the LinkedIn post for like the last 2 people that I think didn't have a job yet. So yeah, I mean, it was just a tough year last year for everybody. Just tough all around. But I think the part that really emphasizes they don't report to SIR, and maybe they should re-examine the numbers that they do present, because that's incredibly like important when that's such a huge selling point, though. Like it's great that your cohort got a lot of the jobs, and honestly, like
that I'm glad that you said that as well. But that is a little bit concerning. And I would encourage students to challenge that. There's nothing that's going to, if they literally reject you for challenging that in the admissions process, that is a big red flag with that program. And it doesn't sound like they would take that personally. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Jennifer.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm not saying it to like hurt Rithm. I'm just saying it. At the time, it was a common concern, even before the global pandemic. We were not like, there were some people, I guess, in my cohort and previous cohorts that didn't get a job. And it's like, I'm not saying that they have to. I'm just saying not everybody's going to.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I also, by the way, disagree. I was just stating, like, just so for the record, everybody knows, like, my cohort has, thankfully for everybody, had like success in the job hunt. And like basically what I believe for my cohort, like we would line up with their statistics, but I do think that those statistics are like way out of date or something. Like I thought the same thing when I was looking at all the stats between all the different boot camps, and I was like, really? Like, I feel like their numbers are so much better. Like, I don't know if they just like did collect the data at one point and just haven't done it again for a while. That's, probably what happened, especially knowing the people that work there. I just don't believe that they're the type of people that are just like, let's just throw some random stats out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like knowing the instructors and everything, like I know they're not intentionally doing this. I just think that they haven't had, they don't have the updated stats.
Yeah.
Yeah, before I enrolled in Rithm, I actually emailed Joel personally, and he said, it's one of the things that bothers him. I think he's like one of the head instructors or lead instructors, and he said, we haven't updated any of our statistics, and we're probably not going to for a while as this pandemic continues. So, I would take those with a grain of salt. And he said, like, it's still an amazing program. You'll still learn a lot, but like, don't count on those numbers to be like accurate to the date that I was emailing him.
Kudos to Joel. I like him.
Joel's great. That was my advisor. I have like a pretty possibly unpopular opinion about, what can be improved or how do you make sure that you do well, basically. And I mean, it's all on you. You're paying a bunch of money to go to this program to have some professionals explain things to you, basically, and tell you what you're doing, good or bad. And if you are not preparing for the lectures, you're not going to have a good day. If you're not practicing these things in your own free time, again, not going to have a good day. If you're not communicating well with your partner and trying to be a good partner, you're not going to have a good day, and you're probably not going to learn that much. And on the job hunt, like, there's no magic wand, like you just have to try really hard and do everything, and Rithm can try to help you as much as possible and give you feedback.
If you lose that momentum, it's just, it's hard to really pick it back up.
So it's 100% your responsibility. Like whatever boot camp you choose, you're going to pay, and they're going to give you a curriculum, and they're going to try to teach you it, and it's on you to learn it. So yeah, possibly unpopular opinion, but look in the mirror. That's who has to do it. And if you take that approach, I think you will have a lot more success.
What could Rithm specifically improve? I think that's good advice for students coming in.
I mean, honestly, the one thing that I felt was possibly lacking was the just like check-ins with your advisor, outside of like, we have this class time. I felt like that was a bit lacking, but I also know that like Zoom fatigue, and you're already just in this Zoom class the entire day. So I don't really fault anyone for that, but
I would say that's a common critique, that it's more student driven than instructor driven, I would say. Like, you would have to be seeking more advice. Mm-hmm. So the one-on-ones are more like, hey, I feel like I struggled on this, or the instructors will be like, oh, you struggled. It's not like you have to be more motivated and try to get the answers out of the instructors rather than them providing like overall answers.
Yeah, proactive to one-on-one help. Yeah, totally. And they have, they don't have infinite amounts of time. You do get multiple code reviews throughout the day from the instructors, and they'll come in and, have a conversation with you about your code. So that one-on-one time is not lost, really. It's not one-on-one, you'll be with your partner, but, there is personal instruction from the instructors.
So I noticed, Lucas, you were very quick to defend them. And that's not a bad thing. But I noticed, like, even with your constructive feedback, you're like, but you give them the benefit of the doubt, which could be really good for the people that you work with, right? You always see the positive in them. So I think, like, the feedback in general, I think it was all pretty accurate. Lucas, I'm actually going to say this as a pro for you. I almost feel like you pick up stuff pretty fast. Like, you're pretty intelligent. You have a lot of confidence in what you're diving into. And I've seen curriculums like this better even. And I would argue that would you say that I'm completely wrong in saying that you did really well in the program?
I mean, I don't know what your standards are for really well. I did not do poorly. I didn't struggle on any weeks.
And so data structures and algorithms is usually a good hint. If you're pretty successful with that, you're pretty successful with most parts of the curriculum. And so usually when I hear that from students, I feel like you were probably, maybe you're being humble, but I feel like you were at least like higher 50% of the class and you did pretty well. So seriously, kudos to you. That's going to like carry with you for a long time in life. Jennifer, I love that you kind of mentioned what some of your other classmates were, some of the hardships and, where they were kind of struggling as well. Because in these reviews, and like I have to specifically mention, it is super hard to get the people that had a bad experience to come on. They almost never do. They don't want to talk about it. They're still looking for a job. They don't want to represent that they don't know enough to get that position, or they were the lower end of the class. So I think anytime people will kind of mention students that didn't have it as good in the class, like that's super beneficial and valuable for people. So I actually thought this constructive criticism was really good. And it was hard to do because Rithm has a pretty good reputation. But that's it. I think we kind of went through the whole thing. I wanted to check, do we get time for the bonus question? We do. Okay, so.
Yay, bonus question.
If there's one final piece of advice that you would give for aspiring developers, maybe a piece of advice that you would have wished you would have heard when you had first started, what would it be?
Rithm School in particular, or any bootcamp?
Any advice for aspiring developers? Feel free.
I'm going to need time to think, so
that's okay.
Someone else go first.
I have ADHD. I was a college dropout. Definitely did not think that a technical profession was going to be in the cards for me. And you hear about engineering. I feel like software engineers just walk around thinking that they're super smart all the time, but it's not that hard. Like, it's really not. Of all the like STEM fields, it has the like shortest learning curve, and the learning curve seems so steep when you're staring at it with zero information, but you get a little help and you start learning and you realize that it just looks really steep, and then it's just this gradual incline for the rest of your career, and it's great, which is what I hope what people strive for in a career, something where you can continually grow and keep learning new things and, always remain challenging yourself, keep your brain nimble, just don't assume that it's the steepest learning curve ever. It's really not. Watch some YouTube videos, do some practice problems. I prepared for I probably spent like 4 weeks learning JavaScript before I did the Rithm School interview. So you can do it, people. You can do it. And I had a full-time job at the time. I was spending like 2 hours in the morning before work every day learning JavaScript. And I got in. So, go for it, people.
I like it.
I guess this is something I would say more to people in general, especially because of my background as an artist. having the discipline and motivation is really important, because motivation will only get you so far. It's only going to carry you until you're done being motivated. While you're motivated, keep building your discipline, because that's going to help you even when you don't feel those happy highs anymore. But yeah, this is true for the job search. This is true for, I found many aspects of life. So just really work on that motivation, because once you drop that motivation and discipline and you kind of lose the working habit, then it's really hard to pick it back up.
I like it. Good advice. How about you?
I would say don't compare yourself to other people. I was probably one of the slower students in rhythm. I really struggled with React a lot. But I was one of the first to get a job. So like, don't compare yourself and your skill to your cohort mates, or to even like people who have more experience in the industry. Because, I was comparing myself to my engineer friends, and I was like, oh my God, they make so much money and they know so much. They're, just you do you, learn at your pace. Obviously it has to be within pace of rhythm. Don't fall behind. But you best. So, just do you.
I like it. So don't put software engineers on a pedestal. Compare yourself to yourself. And, oh my God, I'm blinking. I just got done recording a video. What was your advice, Jennifer?
Build discipline when you have motivation.
Over motivation. Yes. Thank you. I think that's all really good advice. And I haven't been doing that question in my previous episodes, but I do feel like the reason why I wanted to ask that question is because I do feel like all of you do seem to be very perceptive of yourselves, of other people, of your environment. And you seem to have kind of like a healthy mindset that makes me think that you're going to be very successful software engineers, down the road. I really think so. And I don't often say that. I'm not trying to bash other guests that I haven't said that to, but I really, truly do think that. And maybe that's just rhythm, like really only accepting people once they're finally ready to, really guarantee that success. So this was the final episode, or the final question. We're going to jump into outros. I think we have a few minutes left, so we're going to try to speed through these. But Jennifer, if people want to reach out to you, where could they reach you?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. There's a lot of Jennifer Garcias. My new company is going to be Twitter. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about Rhythm or want to know more.
Congrats.
Thank you.
How about you, Lucas?
Yeah, you can also just find me on LinkedIn. I have a super weird last name that's uncommon. I'm sure you'll find me. Lucas, last name Pagac, Pagac. So look for me. And I'd love to chat with anybody. Super open to help new developers. Happy to do code reviews, whatever, very available.
You will most likely get people taking you up on that offer. So
that's great. I love it.
How about you, Jessica?
Like Jennifer, I have a very common name, Jessica Chen. Can I give you a link to my LinkedIn to give to people?
Yeah. So I was going to talk about it after the podcast, but I'll probably link it in the show notes if that's okay with everyone.
Cool. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any questions about Rhythm or my experience finding a job, anything.
Okay, sounds good. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I know a lot of you have been requesting it for quite some time. I'm glad I finally got to do this. Jennifer, Lucas, Jessica, thanks so much for coming on, and stick around for a couple minutes.
Now we just see everything we believe. We just see